Hello and welcome to the Headache Doctor podcast, where on this podcast, it's our mission to educate and empower everyone with headaches and migraines so that you can break free from a life of fear of your next headache or migraine and dependence on medication. In today's podcast, I have Dr. Gutwein, one of the other providers here at Novera Headache Center. He's been on the podcast a few times, and he is one of the major players here when it comes to helping many people from all over the world find relief from their headaches and migraines. And Dr. Gutwein, so we all have a little bit of a different flavor as far as the providers here and the approach we take. There's obviously consistencies throughout the main things, and but what I like to do is bring the other providers on here, like I did with Dr. Thomas, to get insights into what they're learning and what they're seeing with patient care. So Dr. Gutwein, thanks so much for being on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me back.
All right, so what we're going to talk about are three things that everyone with a headache or migraine should know or do. And I'm excited for this. One of the most listened to podcasts that we have is, I think people latch on to things that are practical. And three things, or something about three things, like in college or school, you learn 3 paragraphs or 3 points or in a presentation. So I think there's something digestible about three things, but these are three key things that I think everyone listening to this will be able to take away and make changes with. So what are these three things, Dr. Gutwein?
Yeah, I even just as you were talking about like the different flavors of providers here. I think, as I look at when I first started working here, like what flavor did I practice with? And yeah, I think it's relatively stayed the same, but just as like I've taken different continuing education things and as I've seen like patients respond, it really has like pushed me more and more into whatever flavor you would call it. But yeah, so the three things that I would say that I make sure to tell every patient I see is we talk about, and we'll get more into this, but in general, we talk about sleep, we talk about eating, and then we talk about movement. And those three categories, once we kind of like dive into that, that does a really good job of making sure that we're ensuring that we're taking a very well-rounded view and that we're not, I tell people like when I'm talking about these things and I say like, hey, what are you eating? It's like, I don't know. I think face value, that can sound strange, but what I tell them is I don't want to leave a stone unturned. If you have headache or migraine, which if they're here, they have headaches or migraines, then we need to make sure that we're not lacking in what we're doing in approaching the health as like a full body system. And so, yeah, sleeping, eating, and moving.
Yeah, that's fantastic. On the last podcast, I talked about our 3-spoke framework. I think these three things will fit in well to the framework. If you haven't listened to that, go back, listen to the last episode. It's this might be a little bit more practical application to the 3-spoke framework, and these three things will fit in well. They'll sort of like blend across the three categories and touch on each of them. But yeah, let's start out with sleep. What are some common things you see and recommendations you might have for someone in regards to sleep?
Yeah, so when I'm working with somebody with sleep, I generally just break it down into two categories. It's your quality of sleep. How are you sleeping? And then what position of sleep are you in? So if either of those things are suboptimal, then you're going to have something eventually present. Either you're going to be waking up every morning groggy, or you're going to be waking up every morning with a headache. And so in terms of sleep quality, generally what I'm talking about is just the concept of sleep hygiene. This is not a Brandt coined term. This is just a general idea that sleep hygiene is how we're approaching our nighttime routine, and are we prepping our body well to shut down for the day. I think like just a few practical tips that I tell people, and sometimes it's easy to think about what sleep hygiene is by saying what it isn't. And so oftentimes what I share with people is, they say, what is sleep hygiene and how do I do it? I say, well, let me talk about the opposite, and you do the opposite of that. So it's the terrible sleep hygiene would be you're like watching a high action film, it's loud, there's lights, you're eating food, you're drinking soda that has caffeine, and then the movie ends, you turn it off, you jump into your bed, and then you wonder why you're up for 30 minutes every night. It's like, well, you didn't prep your body at all and say like, okay, we're getting ready to sleep. So on the flip side, sleep hygiene then, and this is a huge thing, so I can't summarize it. Like, this is what you need to do, and it needs to be individualized too. But generally, it's just making a consistent routine, so consistency in what you do, and then a consistency in the time as well. So what that means is that, like, for example, you could do, it's like, okay, I'm not going to eat 2 hours before bedtime. I'm going to let my body kind of like fully digest. I'm going to kind of cut off, water intake 30 minutes, an hour before, so that I'm not having to wake up every night at 2 a.m. because I have to use the restroom. You also want to make sure that like you're not using like a high stimulus. So you're not watching TV with like within the 30 minutes, hour before bed. Even your nighttime routine in terms of like brushing your teeth, or if there is any sort of like facial cleanse, or if you shower at night, that's consistent so that your body can get into that rhythm. And then I think there's also just this component of sleep hygiene that like you need to make sure you're going to bed physically tired. So that involves like you have an active lifestyle. That kind of like predicates the third thing I want to talk about, which is movement. Which we have to be moving. So we want to be going to bed with like a drained battery, where we did activity, we moved, we didn't sit all day, and then our body's like, I need sleep. So those are all, I think, good components of sleep quality. And then in terms of sleep position, we want to this is where it's like hard to, because each person can have their own personal preferences. I don't know what you share with your patients, but generally what I say is like back sleeping is most ideal. It requires the least amount of like setup. There's still things you can do poorly, like if you throw your arm over your head, or I call it like if you're frog legging one of your legs, or if you're rotating your head to the left or to the right. Like there's ways to do back sleeping poorly, but you don't need much work. You just kind of lay on your back, you figure out what to do with your arms that isn't throwing them above your head, and you fall asleep. Sleep position, stomach sleeping. I'm sure you've mentioned this a time or two on the podcast, but like if you're a stomach sleeper, stop. If you think about the position that puts your neck in, you're going to experience at least neck tension. If you're here, it's probably a contributing factor as to why you have headaches. So side sleeping can be good as well. You want to consider the neck position, the position of your arms and kind of your chest cavity, and then you want to consider the placement of your legs. I don't know. I assume you've talked some about this, so I don't want to like over-iterate what's already been said on previous podcasts. But a lot of times when people sleep on their side, they're actually like 3/4 rolling onto their stomach, where like the top leg goes forward, the arms are kind of crunched together. Oftentimes the lower arm is under the pillow on the like further head. That indicates the pillow isn't supportive enough, so you want to make sure you have a thick enough pillow to let your head lay in neutral. I usually suggest like a pillow with some contour to it that allows the neck and the head to be supported, and those are different thicknesses. So the contour kind of acts as a support for the neck, for the head at those different levels. Hug a pillow between the knees. That's just kind of like a rough and ready quick summary of like sleep in general.
Yeah, and all the things that someone can control, which there's quite a bit there. And I would imagine most everyone has, minimum 1 or 2 things that they can change based on what you just described. Maybe connect this. There may be a scenario here where people are like, okay, well, my head hurts. Why do I have to worry about this stuff? And sleep hygiene maybe in particular. Why is that important?
Yeah, so there's definitely a correlation to our body's ability to rest, recover, and then its ability to kind of like deal with inflammation, deal with maybe abnormalities. So if we're not getting adequate rest, then it's going to be very unlikely that our body's going to recover. So that's kind of like people say I need like R&R, rest and recovery. If you're not getting rest, you can't get recovery, or at least not as quickly as it should happen. And so, if someone is in a state where their body is experiencing tension on a consistent basis just because of work stress, of life stress, and then you're going to bed stressed, you haven't prepped yourself for sleep, then like I'll say little issues, like just maybe a minor issue early on that was just you tweaked your neck. Later on, that becomes chronic headaches and migraines. So dealing with this, it allows your body to get into kind of a recovering state.
Yeah. Okay. Any other thoughts on sleep?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. So we got sleep and then food. Eating. Yeah. So this, I really feel that I'm thankful that I feel like I mean, we've had a lot of people on the podcast, like functional medicine, dietitians, people that spend a lot of their time talking about food and gut health. I appreciate that you have really taken this a little bit further in our practice, and I think you have some really good specific recommendations for people when it comes to their diet and what you're recommending. So let's talk about eating.
Yeah. Our diet is important for obvious reasons. What you put in, you get out. So if you're putting junk in, it would be weird if your body functioned optimally. Now, some people can get away with this just because of like lifestyle. Maybe they're super active, so they can get away with eating, like high sugary cereals or like processed foods, just like as their regular meal. I think I saw something. I think this is kind of a thing going around, but like NFL players and Lunchables. Have you seen this?
No.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know the exact number, but I think the NFL like on average consumes. I want to say like 80,000 Lunchables. It's like 30,000 or 80,000. That's a big range, but either way, it's a huge number of not Lunchables, Uncrustables, the sandwich.
Seriously,
that they eat that many in a typical season. So it's like, the NFL player, highly active, they can get away with eating like the carbs and the sugar on a regular basis. But for the rest of us, we need to be a little bit more cautious because I'm sitting a lot during the day working with people who have headaches and migraines. So I need to be cautious, and a lot of my patients work desk jobs that I haven't had an NFL player yet, hopefully. I don't know. We'll see. But like I haven't had that person. I'm just like, hey, honestly, like it may not matter in this stage what you're eating. For most people, we have to be really cautious of what we're putting in. Food is fuel. So just general concepts as I think about foods that are inflammatory. In a lot of diets, I don't know, you can call them fad diets or whatever, they really focus on cutting out, which that's helpful. In terms of sustainability, I think it's lacking. If we're just saying, don't eat this, don't eat this, don't eat this, it's like, okay, I can do that, but then you're at a Super Bowl party. I don't know why I'm on the NFL kick, but you're at a Super Bowl party and all of a sudden all the food in front of you is what you cannot eat. And you're just like, okay, well, I'm here. I'm going to enjoy the time. And so you break the diet, and then at that point the diet's over. You've broken the diet. You're going to go back to your old eating habit. So in terms of sustainability, we have to think about, okay, what can you cut out sustainably, and then what can you replace or what can you add back in? And there's a couple of facets to that. So in general, like foods to cut out, we just want to think about high inflammatory foods. So generally what I tell people is dairy, sugar, gluten, be mindful of. You've got alcohol and caffeine, which can be headache-inducing. Alcohol is it's hard for our bodies to digest. It does a lot kind of like in the chemical complex of our brain to kind of like produce inflammation or release inflammation. And then caffeine is hard because that can be addictive, and it's helpful for some people. Some people, when they have a headache, they're like, I take Excedrin migraine, which has, 80 to 100 milligrams of caffeine. And it's like, okay, well, you just took a cup of coffee. Your headache feels better, but now your body has this caffeine dependence. And what happens if you break that caffeine dependence? You're now in withdrawals and you're going to experience migraine or headache. So you just want to be wary of caffeine. I also think just like if we're thinking inflammatories in general, like seed oils, MSG, a lot of like preservatives, you just want to be cautious of. I think it's hard to just say like hard and fast avoid all of these, specifically with like dairy, sugar, and gluten. They're not evil, they're just inflammatory. And so it's just kind of like, I think what's helpful is what I tell people is look at your diet. So either if you have like a lock safe memory, just look back at your last week and say, and day by day, like write it down. Write down what you've eaten. And if you look at it and you're like, holy smokes, I have dairy for every single meal. I have a glass of milk and a bowl of cereal for breakfast. And then for lunch, I have mac and cheese. And then for dinner, I have lasagna. And then I have ice cream. It's like you're having dairy every single meal. Dairy has a difficulty to digest. And so your body's having to work really hard. A lot of people have like a dairy sensitivity, and you're just putting this in 5 times a day, 3 meals a day. And it's like, yeah, your body's going to be in a state of inflammation. And so just, I tell people be mindful of it. Occasionally I think it's helpful just in a state of like, if you're like, I don't know what my triggers are, I say do like, there's a diet called like the Whole30 or Whole60. And it basically just is an elimination style diet. You cut it out for 30 to 60 days. And then you incrementally add back in. So you're doing 2 things with that. You're one, removing inflammation, which sometimes can be notable, sometimes not notable. But then where you really will notice it is if you add back in, and then you're like, oh, I didn't notice that I was necessarily feeling better, but now I'm adding sugar back in, and I notice that I necessarily feel bad. So you kind of get like 2 chances to figure out what specifically is bogging me down, is causing this inflammation, is linked to my headaches. We cover this a lot. They're not causing head pain. They're causing inflammation, which triggers the neck, which then triggers the head pain. But you have to figure out what are those things contributing to kind of the global inflammation of our body. Then the concept is, okay, so we've talked about cutting this out. What can we add in to then replace? So specifically with like sugar or dairy, gluten, like it's hard. I mean, thankfully, I've been dairy free since I was like 8 years old. When I first was dairy free, it was cartoned rice milk, which was pretty yucky. And I just didn't do it. Like I wasn't putting cartoned rice milk in a bowl of cereal. I would just rather eat dry cereal at that point. At this point though, you go to like a dairy section, and it's like the amount of cow's milk product versus like non-dairy beverage product, it's like it's 50-50. Like you have just as many options. You've got like almond, oat, soy, and then like pea protein. I don't know, there's a bunch of different types of non-dairy milk. So it can be like as simple as a substitution of that. Try it. With sugar, it's look at alternative sugar methods. It's definitely not diet sugar like aspartame or your Splendas or Sweet and Lows. Those have such a high link to inflammation, to like even like high links to headache and migraine. So the answer is not just go there, but there are just naturally occurring sweetened substances. So we look at like monk fruit, coconut sugar, maple syrup, honey. Like these are more natural things. And I tell people, don't do like 1 for 1. Don't go from a bunch of cane sugar to then a bunch of maple syrup. Like it's still sugar, but it's just easier for our body to digest. So replace with that. But then I also think about adding just anti-inflammatory agents. So I mean, you can kind of go down a rabbit hole of research with this, but generally when people think anti-inflammatory, we're thinking that there's ginger, there's turmeric, green tea, there's various different types of supplements that can be helpful. And so, I tell people, make sure you're adding anti-inflammatory agents as well. And if that's part of your diet, there's really no risk to that. You always want to be cautious when you're like, if I don't know, I never tell someone, take this supplement. Like, I'm not prescribing that. But I always tell people, like, with supplements, they should supplement. They should not be a replacement. They're not called replacements. They're called supplements. And so there can be even, like, people can ask, oh, should I take a ginger encapsulation? Should I take a turmeric encapsulation? And I typically tell them, see if you can get it in your diet naturally. And then if you're noticing a consistent lacking, you're tracking it, and you don't have any medications that would kind of like have a adverse response to that supplement, then check with your provider or like a medical medicine prescribing provider and see if you can start adding those types of supplements. But
Yeah, it's fantastic. And you're just a physical therapist, man.
just a PT, stay in my lane.
I don't care. Yeah, I don't care what those other people say about you. That was amazing. So to bring it back to the last podcast, and by the way, as you're talking, I'm like, man, if a patient goes through a process and doesn't see you, like they need to have you speak into this element. That really fits well with that third spoke in the framework, which is the systemic side of things, the environment that our pain is experienced in. And if the body's experiencing this heightened level of inflammation, it's just going to make it tougher for someone to cope with neck issue. Now sleep, there's things that fall into the physical, the actual source of pain, and then there's also there's that third spoke as well, like systemically, how healthy is this person? And so we can fit that into both camps, diet, food, gut health, probably more so just in that third camp. But then we've got movement, exercise, this third thing that people can consider. And you have provided a substantial amount of information, which has been, great. So many things that people can walk away with. This might be, again, chock full of very practical things, but what do you see as far as movement that people are needing?
Yeah, so this is more so what we would think, like this is the lane of a physical therapist. So
yeah,
if anybody's felt uncomfortable, this is this is the happy spot now. So movement is obviously super important. I think there's just like the general phrase in physical therapy that's like motion is lotion. Motion, the more we do it, the more it kind of helps our body know that this is normal. So you've got like the specific joint benefits of having regular movement. But then especially with just like our cardiovascular side of things, we also have like the ability to improve endurance and lower heart rate, like a resting heart rate. So especially if when someone has chronic pain, there can be an element where like that can be anxiety producing. If we don't give our body an outlet to like relieve that, then that just kind of culminates and it can spiral into like someone just feels anxious and their muscles are tense and their heart feels like it's racing. It's like, well, you have to give your body an outlet to kind of release that. And so you have to be regularly exercising. Exercise can look different for people in many stages of life. It looks different for me than my parents, and it looks different from my parents to my grandparents. And so, this is the same thing. Like, I can't just give you, this is what you have to do. But in your stage of life, with where your health fitness is, you have to be moving. There has to be exercise. And we talked about this, I don't know when this was, maybe a year or so ago, but like just general exercise principles. So you can just, as the listener, just like refer back to that. I think it was just, I don't know what it was called, but exercise-induced headaches or something along those lines of what are movement principles. So you can go back for that. But generally, we just want to make sure that we're getting consistent exercise most days of the week. Especially if you're working age or if you have children, your priority so often is deadlines or it's on your children. And so we need to make sure that there is an element of exercise that is getting our heart rate up. There's so many benefits beyond just like we feel better when we exercise. There is kind of like this dopamine release and we feel these kind of endorphins, and it's like, I feel good. Like that was tiring, but I have more energy now that I exercise, which seems kind of like counterintuitive. So sometimes people tell me, they're like, I'm too tired to exercise. And I'm like, well, if you exercise, you'll have more energy. You have to like push through those first couple of days. But your body learns. Our bodies love routines, and our bodies love habits, and our bodies were designed to move. And so if we lack any of those, if we're not moving, and we haven't created the habit of motion, then the first couple of times of exercise are going to be hard. So it doesn't mean we all have to become CrossFitters or do like super intense workout, But it means we have to be doing exercise, even if it's just going on family walks and you're pushing your kid's stroller. Choose the route with more hills. Make it challenging, make it worth it. So you are being like a parent, you are being like a present parent, guiding and leading your children, but you're also worrying about your own health. You're not sacrificing that. Maybe you wake up 20 or 30 minutes early, and then you do a bit of like a morning routine where you're stretching, you're kind of making sure that tension doesn't build, but then you're doing kind of like a 15-minute HIIT type workout. And there's a bunch of different resources in terms of like going through exercise plans, because it wouldn't be great to just do like the same 5 exercises every single day. You're probably going to develop like really strong muscles, and other muscles are going to be begging to be included in. But yeah, we have to be moving. It's worth it. So wake up earlier, take breaks during your day, or stay up later if you're a night person. And then the other concept with movement is just like, especially on this podcast, at this practice, we have to focus on the neck. So movement, when I say movement in general, it is exercise, but it is also specifically with the neck. And so, yeah, there's a bunch of different exercises. The chin tuck, which is kind of like the bread and butter. I tell people it's like, this is the brushing your teeth of exercises. Like you have to undo like the forward head posture, and that's done by the chin tuck. You do that tuck, you add a few nods when you're holding that tuck, and that's super helpful. A lot of it goes with our shoulders. So we've told people, like lay vertically on a foam roller, put your arms out to the side, raise them up until you feel stretch in the shoulders. If we can get the shoulders back, then the neck is going to be more likely to be where it is. But if our shoulders are rounded forward, our head's going to also follow it forward. So we have to get the neck moving. And then there's different ways to kind of try to get rotation or side bending in. And some of that's hard to describe via word. But yeah, I think just on the various social media platforms, I know that you've posted different like exercises to do. And so, yeah, if this is like striking a chord and you're like, I need to get my neck moving, then I would say, yeah, just kind of, I don't know, is it the Headache Doctor? What's it on social media?
Yeah. So on, let's see, on Instagram. Yeah. On Instagram, it's Novera Headache Center. And then on TikTok, it would be the Headache Doctor. And then you can also go to our website. So noveraheadachecenter.com. And we do have a course. It's $150, and you can take the course. It's video of a description of like the mechanics and why you would have headaches or migraines, and then it walks you through actually videos of the different exercises, sort of like a basic plan for someone. And so anyone can go on our website and purchase that course, and it's available immediately. As soon as you buy it, you'll have access, and you can watch all the modules or skip to the one with the home exercises. And even just like having video footage of those specific exercises, sticking with those in combination with everything else that Dr. Gutwein's talked about, I think would be super helpful. Yeah. Any other thoughts with movement?
Yeah, it's hard because this is just scratching the surface of so much of what we talk about. And so, yeah, there's definitely more. I mean, because we have to think about, and this goes back to the last time I was on, but we have to think about with movement, like you have to balance how mobile you are with how stable you are. So various people have leanings towards the other, and one is not right. One is not better than the other. You have to find the balance. So the gymnast, tons of mobility, but they're going to struggle with stability. The bodybuilder, tons of stability. They've got these big bulging like muscles and muscles on their muscles, but like, yeah, they can't scratch an itch on their back because they have no mobility. So the answer is somewhere in the middle. But yeah, exercise is good.
Yeah. I have a few thoughts. I mean, one, as we're talking, like these principles are going to apply to most everyone. I can understand if someone listening is thinking like, my migraine situation is triggered by exercise, or I've tried all the diets and they don't work, or I do all that stuff and I still don't sleep well. And yeah, we get it. We've seen nearly every type of headache or migraine. And I think the thing I would encourage you, the listener, to realize is that one, this podcast is not intended to be a standalone, do this and you'll get better. I think there are probably a lot of people that their life has been changed just by listening to this podcast and the advice that we provide. But it's so nuanced, and every individual has their own individual scenario, and even things like that, like telling someone, we need to move more, can look different. And so that's where our coaching program comes in, where we can hear your situation and speak into it and guide you in a more specific way. And then, of course, coming in and allowing us to work on you in person and to educate you specifically in your situation is, it will allow us to then prescribe and help you get to the finish line. And so I think, Dr. Gutwein, you did a great job of laying out, some really, really helpful practical things that kind of span all three of those spokes in the framework that can help anyone with headaches and migraines. So thanks so much for being on the Headache Doctor podcast again.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
All right. So thank you all for listening again and being a part of this journey that we're on. Please leave a 5-star review and let us know how this has helped you and impacted you. Share this with someone that you think needs to hear it as we continue on this journey of educating and empowering everyone with headaches and migraines so that you can break free from a life of fear of your next headache or migraine and dependence on medication. We'll see you next week.